There's a pretty solid chance that while you're watching this video, Monster Hero Sakurai is hard at work on the new installment of the Super Smash Bros. Series. It may not be confirmed or revealed, but with the successor to the Switch coming ever closer, the same can be said of the successor to Smash Bros. Ultimate. However, expectations feel different for this one. So far, every Smash Bros. Hype cycle has been filled with rumors on new additions, but this time around, it seems a decent amount of fans actually expect the new game to feature a substantially smaller roster. Smash Ultimate was the peak in a way, everyone was here, and at this point the game has almost 100 playable characters. Surely its follow-up won't reach, let alone surpass that number, right? It seems to be a relatively common idea for a potential new Smash game, a sort of reboot that basically rebuilds the concept of the series from the ground up. Today I want to join that thought experiment and build what I would consider the perfect roster for a potential Super Smash Bros. Reboot, should it truly be the Smash Bros. Game to come early on in the Switch 2's lifespan. Let's get started. Before we get to characters and series, however, we have to set one very important baseline. How many characters would a reboot have on its roster? It's a question only Sakurai can answer, and while we could leave a comment on his YouTube channel, I'm not confident he'd reply. So we have to figure that one out ourselves. I think we do have to keep in mind the game we're coming from. Like I mentioned earlier, Smash Bros. Ultimate had almost 100 characters, so going from that all the way back to the roster size of the original Smash Bros. On Nintendo 64 seems like too big a jump. Even those who actively want to reboot with a smaller roster wouldn't be satisfied with a mere 12 characters, I don't think. Melee upped the numbers to 26, and considering that's still a widely popular game more than 20 years later, I feel that might be around the acceptable lower limit. To cross-reference that number into our modern time, Smash Ultimate actually had a very similar number of DLC characters added post-launch, being 24, so I would say that's at least a slight nod that it's actually doable from a development standpoint as well. So I'm just gonna call it and say our Smash Bros. Reboot will feature 25 characters. Again, it's based on a bit of guesswork, but we have to draw the line somewhere. Alright, that's enough talk about numbers for today, let's dive into the characters. We're gonna kick things off with the Mario series, represented in Smash Ultimate with a massive 9 characters. That would be more than a third of our roster gone in a second, and while Mario may be a huge series, that's a little too much representation. So I'm gonna dial it back to what I would consider the 4 main characters of the series: Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Bowser. Daisy, Rosalina, Bowser Jr. and Piranha Plant simply are not iconic or relevant enough to remain when spots are this tight, while Dr. Mario could stay as an alternate costume for regular Mario. While the series getting cut in half in terms of characters might be quite the blow to its fans, there's also something to be happy about, because the 4 that remain can really benefit from the full overhaul a reboot would allow. Not counting the Cappy Taunt or purple coin that appears in its up special, the most recent game referenced in Mario's moveset is Sunshine, in the form of Flood. So yeah, he's in dire need of an overhaul, with moves based on recent games like Odyssey, Wonder, 3D World, hell even Galaxy would be a revolution at this point. Luigi and Peach are in similar spots, with movesets that were created while in a rush for Melee, and have barely been updated since. Give Luigi a Luigi's Mansion inspired moveset, and completely renovate Peach by working the outfits of Princess Peach Showtime into a new moveset, and you're good to go. Bowser is not in such a dire position as the 3 others, I think, but he could also do with some new moves. Oh, and new sound effects. The days of Melee are over. Bowser has had a canonical voice for a full adult's life by now, Sakurai. It's time you put it in there. Staying with the Mario adjacent series, Donkey Kong, Yoshi and Wario will all return for this reboot. The same cannot be said for Diddy Kong and King K. Rool, however. For the latter, that's easy to understand, I assume. He hasn't featured in a mainline DK game since 64. He should be happy he's even in Ultimate. Diddy Kong hurt me a lot more to cut though, and for what it's worth, he did make my list of maybes that I would have used in case we had spaces left at the end. But we don't, and with the lower status of Donkey Kong as the series in recent years, I'm afraid the little monkey won't make it. Next up is The Legend of Zelda, and that's one of the easiest ones, I'd say. Link, Zelda and Ganondorf will all stay, while Young Link, Toon Link and Sheik are getting cut. I guess with a bit of artistic freedom, Toon or Young Link could reappear as alternate costumes for Link, but Sheik's time is definitely up. She has more appearances in the Smash Bros. Series than Zelda after all, there's no place for that in a reboot. As for what incarnations Link, Zelda and Ganondorf should be based on though, that's more difficult. I think out of all 3 I would most want Zelda to be her recent Breath of the Wild era appearance, mostly because I find that to be a very interesting take on the character. For Link, a return to his classic green tunic wouldn't be the end of the world, and for Ganondorf, there's still a lot of potential for him to actually represent his Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess appearance, as opposed to merely being a Captain Falcon clone. The first steps were made with Ultimate, but more can be done. Then we're moving on to Metroid, currently represented by Samus, Zero Suit Samus, Dark Samus, and Ridley. Of course, Samus, in Power Suit, is staying, no debate there, but I'm afraid for the other three, this is where it ends. Zero Suit hasn't been featured in most of the recent games, so she's an easy out, and although the same can be said for Ridley, his status is ironically not big enough to survive the cruel cut back to 25 characters. Dark Samus could, I guess, stay as an alternate costume to actual Samus, but as a standalone she has no chance. She's only ever appeared in Metroid Prime 2 and 3, and considering she dies in the latter, I don't think we'll see her in Metroid Prime 4 either. It has been hinted that Psylocke will play a big role in that game, and should it be released before the new Smash game, it is possible he'll be added as a new addition, but with our limited spots and lack of information on that, adding him now would be premature. From one space series to another, we land at Kirby, where we'll face another painful mission, I'm afraid. Of course, it isn't the titular character himself, so that leaves either King Dedede or Meta Knight to be cut. Simply put, the Kirby series isn't big enough to warrant 3 spots in this limited roster, which would be the same amount as much bigger franchises like Zelda and, spoiler, Pokémon. So I'm afraid someone's head will have to roll. And that head is wearing a mask, as it's Meta Knight who I'm cutting. As cool as I find him, King Dedede is simply the more iconic of the two. Well, that, and I cannot see Sakurai removing his own voice credits from the game. And since I already spoiled it, let's go with Pokémon next. Currently, Pokémon is either the series with the most playable fighters, if you count Pokémon trainers separated, or in second place behind Mario. That exact balance will remain, as I'm bringing the series back to 3 fighters, one of which is Pokémon trainer. Of course, Pikachu's staying, that should be obvious. Next, I'm pulling a Smash 4 and releasing Charizard from its trainer, making it a separate fighter. You wouldn't think it was possible in the 90s for Charizard's stock to rise even more, but in recent generations it has popped up as a sort of secondary mascot for the series and remains wildly popular, to the point where it's starting to annoy the fanbase even. To those fans I'm sorry, but here's another Dex cut Charizard is surviving. Pokémon Trainer is also staying, and will be given an entirely new team with representation from the 3 most recent Pokémon games, Sword and Shield, Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet. I want to stay with the starter motif the previous incarnation had, but there are still a lot of different combinations to make, so please share your preferred group in the comments below. The one I ended up going with is Quaxly, Reboot and Hisui and Decidueye, as I personally think is the strongest trio to make across the board. I really wanted to include Fuecoco, but that would mean either Drizzile or Hisui and Summerup makes the cut, and neither of them I see working too well in Smash Bros to be honest. And so, just for formalities, Jigglypuff, Pichu, Mewtwo, Lucario, Greninja and Incineroar get cut. Pokemon don't ever truly lose relevance, but the moment in the spotlight for these has definitely passed, so I think they're understandable omissions. We're gonna head to Star Fox next, and this is gonna be another brutal one. Frankly, the question for the series isn't how many characters should make it, it's whether any character should make it at all. Far as I know, Star Fox is the only relatively high-profile Nintendo series to have a game on Wii U and not on Switch, which says enough about the status of the series in current times. Personally, I don't see the status of Star Fox improving for the time being, but I do think Fox has enough history to land a spot on our Reboot roster. Falco and Wolf are definitely out though, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone really. On to Fire Emblem, traditionally one of Smash's highest represented series, which means cuts are coming. Big time. One character who is staying, however, is Byleth. A new Fighter Pass edition, I think Three Houses has solidified its position as one of Switch's biggest success stories, so I can reserve a spot for its main character. The same can be said for the rest, however. Yes, I am cutting all other Fire Emblem characters, meaning Marth, Roy, Ike, Robin, Chrome, Lucina and Corrin will not retain their spot. We are, however, introducing our first new fighter of this reboot, Alear, the main character of Fire Emblem Engage. And this is where I want to bring in all the cut characters. So, Engage revolves for a huge part around the ability to call up the spirits of famous Fire Emblem characters from the past, called Emblems. Many of the Smash Bros. Fighters appear in this form, as well as other fan favorites like Lyn. I want to incorporate them into Alear's moveset, functioning in a way similar to Shulk and his Monado arts, where you can pick an emblem to summon and use, which will then follow after Alear like Arsene does with Joker. I think it's the perfect way to represent the many characters of the Fire Emblem series, while still only counting as one spot on our roster and doing justice to the character of Alear. Win, win, win. what more could you want? Speaking of Switch's success stories, I want to tackle Animal Crossing and Pikmin next. Currently they are represented by Villager and Isabelle and Olimar, albeit with Elf as alternate costume respectively. Pikmin I think was a relatively easy one. Keep Olimar as I feel he's still the face of the series, but add the new main character of Pikmin 4 as another alternate costume, either in addition to or replacing Elf depending on development time and things like that. For Animal Crossing I think Villager is a definite stay, but Isabelle is a lot trickier. In fact, I don't think there was a fate more difficult to decide than hers, to be honest. On the one hand, I think Animal Crossing deserves 2 spots based on the relevance of the series, but Isabelle's stock has fallen a bit since New Leaf, shrinking her chances, while Tom Nook's profile has risen, with a big role in New Horizons. In the end though, I decided to cut a second Animal Crossing character, for the simple reason that neither Isabelle nor Tom Nook fully convinced me they deserved a spot, and with so few places, that's an important factor. I'll say this though, if I were allowed one more spot, it would go to either of these two. Then we get to Xenoblade, for which, regardless of how much the series has grown on Switch, I just cannot allow more than one rep. That means Pyra and Mythra are definitely out of the picture, leaving Shulk to face off against Noah and Mio from Xenoblade 3. Fortunately, that game's expansion, Future Redeemed, has made this easy for us, as that game features Shulk heavily, further solidifying his place as mascot for the series, meaning he will retain Xenoblade's only spot in the roster. And for character number 23, we get to a very easy one, being the Inkling from Splatoon. Obviously this still relatively new IP deserves a spot, no debate there whatsoever, nor is there any reason to add a new character from the series, so slot them in and let's move on. So we now have 2 spots remaining, which I both want to fill up with a little twist. One of them will go to a sole rep from Nintendo's further catalog of games, which are series that can be considered either dead, dying or brand new, while the last spot will go to one third-party character. Should a Smash reboot actually happen, I don't think a third-party character being included on the base roster is very likely, but for the sake of a fun discussion, let's toss it in. If you don't agree, that's completely fine, you get to choose 2 retro Nintendo characters. And the list of candidates for that spot is a painful one to look at, as it's filled with characters eager to return to the spotlight, but with little chance to do so. First on the list is Captain Falcon, who has become synonymous with Smash, further signaling the low status of F-Zero currently. However, F-Zero 99 is a thing now, so perhaps there could be a new game in the series coming soon, which would make him a very good candidate to take this spot if he isn't already. Next up is Ness to represent the now dead Earthbound franchise. I'm afraid Lucas simply has no chance, seeing as Mother 3 never released in the West, but for Ness, chances are not zero. However, he will be a true retro pick, as unlike some of his competition, there's no new games on even the furthest of horizons. In a similar corner are characters like Rob, Ice Climbers, Mr. Game & Watch and Duck Hunt, who I'm afraid will all not be returning in a potential reboot. Someone with a slightly bigger chance is Lil Mac, all thanks to the Punch-Out game on Wii, which is a lot more recent than the last true F-Zero or Earthbound games. However, Mac is bested in that regard by my pick for this retro spot, being Pit. I guess you could say that the existence of Uprising disqualifies Pit for this role, but I definitely disagree, as I think it's pretty obvious by now that the Kid Icarus series is not really active, it was merely Sakurai who was allowed to do as he pleased with that one. And while it may eventually be getting a remake, I don't see a new Kid Icarus game releasing soon, so I'm counting him as retro representation. Oh, and this should probably go without saying, but Palutena and Dark Pit don't make the cut. And while I have already mentioned Pit is my choice for the 24th spot, I do want to throw up 2 names based on new IPs, being the return of Min Min from ARMS, or a newcomer in the form of Ring Fit Trainee, in the same mold as a definitely cut Wii Fit trainer. ARMS did quite well as an early Switch game, and Min Min's inclusion in Ultimate shows Sakurai agrees. However, over time, hype for the game has dwindled to the point where I'm not so sure the series will return, making her a bit of a weird inclusion for this one miscellaneous Nintendo spot. Ring Fit Trainee is a character I'm willing to bet will be included if a reboot doesn't happen, seeing as the game was a huge success with enormous sales. But the same concept applies. I'm not so sure this series will return, so that combined with zero nostalgia or retro relevance whatsoever makes for a weird pick for this spot. And so, it's Pit for me. And then we get to the final free space, the third party character. One name that is not owned by Nintendo. Seeing as this is a highly competitive spot, the candidate has to be in top shape, both in terms of being a gaming icon as well as being a core part of Nintendo's history. We can immediately rule out some characters based on either of those, such as icons like Cloud, Snake or Steve, lacking the Nintendo history, while Banjo and Simon are not iconic enough compared to other names. That leaves us with a short list of 5 characters. Pac-Man, Mega Man, Sonic the Hedgehog, Hero, and Bayonetta. I think it's fair to say the first three are the more iconic ones, but Dragon Quest and Bayonetta are a huge part of Nintendo's history, with the latter almost being a de facto first-party series these days. If we begin narrowing the list down further, I think Mega Man and Hero are the first to have to go. Hero definitely lacks a certain recognizability in the West, and even in Japan, where Dragon Quest is immensely popular, is Hero hurt by the fact he's not one character, but a new incarnation every time. Mega Man, on the other hand, loses out simply because he's outdone by the remaining candidates. Sonic and Pac-Man are more iconic, Bayonetta is more part of the Nintendo family, so he gets cut. Next to fall will be Pac-Man for me, all due to the fact that while he's one of gaming's most iconic characters, his recent output is basically non-existent. While games do get released, none have made a splash for decades on it now, which for such a competitive spot is a killer. And that leaves us with two second characters, Sonic and Bayonetta. The strengths and weaknesses of the two are clear. Sonic is way more iconic, is absolutely hot right now with the movies and Frontiers being well received, but his history with Nintendo is more about rivalry than being part of the family. Bayonetta can't touch Sonic's status, and her latest game wasn't a huge success, but she is almost a first party character at this point. And so, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, my heart says Sonic, my brain says Bayonetta, but I'm following my heart, so Sonic gets the final spot. Just please update his moveset, Sakurai. Sonic was a late addition to Brawl and it shows big time. And with that, we have what I would consider the perfect roster for a Smash Bros. Reboot. Old legends reinvented, many series represented, and even some new characters implemented. Please let me know your roster picks down in the comments below. I'm really curious what you guys would do differently. I'm sure some of you will have some great additions that I didn't even think of. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.